To be or not to be persecuted? That is the question. The word persecution brings retribution, which is just an attribution to the persecution. So to be or not to be persecuted. For the word persecution takes on a lot of shapes and forms. It could take on the way you look, the way you wear your hair, what kind of shoes you wear, what you look like, your ethnicity, your culture, your language, your religion. You could be persecuted for anything. Just for someone talking about you is persecuting you. We see the worldly view where people get falsely persecuted for what they believe in, for sticking up for the dumb, for speaking righteously of the Lord, for speaking about a oneness, because there is no angle, there's only well-rounded. So with that being said, we're going to speak on a worldly and a spiritual level about to be or not to be persecuted. Because we even have those that could be holy and holy on the outside, go to church on Sunday, hit the synagogue on Saturday, have all the traditions on the outside, but carry no substance on the inside. But then they want to point the finger at you with all the other atrocities that they got going on in their life. We see that everybody wants to pick the little twig that's in somebody else's eye when they got a whole forest and the backyard full of bones in their backyard and a forest laying in their eye. Don't sit down and try to talk about someone else's atrocities when you got a whole graveyard in the backyard full of them. So to be or not to be persecuted, that is the question. Galatians chapter 6, 7 through 17 says, "Do not be deceived, for God shall not be mocked. For whatever one sows, he shall also reap. For the one who sows with his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption." Like I said, those who sow to their flesh, that think about material things, that get envious, greedy, and only think about their storehouse, storing up in the storehouse, keep it in the community, in their little circle, always have a corrupt way with a corrupt means and in a corrupt agenda. But the one who sows in the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. For that seed of justice, for that seed of righteousness, for that seed of works by the law, by faith, and I say it again, with works, has taken a grape and turned it into wine, has taken a seed that landed into fertile soil, thus thou reaping fruit and bearing that fruit in this life and the next with the double portion. And let us now grow weary of doing good. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, when we have the opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of a household of faith by thy works, because faith has no feelings. Faith takes on works and belief. See with the large letters that I am writing you by hand that it is also you who want to make a good showing in the flesh, who would force you to be circumcised. So in other words, he's writing by hand, letting those also know that there's going to be those that are speaking holy, holy, act of righteousness, showing you on the outside, just like I said, the traditions without the substance inside. They ask you to be as holy of them, but behind closed doors, what do? They sit down and they want to persecute you for all the wrong that you're doing, but they have a forest in their eye trying to pick a twig out of yours. For even those who are circumcised do not keep the laws themselves, but they desire that you be circumcised so they can boast and brag about all the wrongdoing that you're doing. And this is what the atrocities that we see today. We see a lot of pointing finger. We see the politics has changed. We see that everybody's committing atrocities scheming and scamming behind closed doors, but then they want to point at somebody else is wrong to divert you, and then use the materialistic things and other false presentations to make it look like they're of the word of God. They are of righteousness. They're that good person when on the inside they're actually not. And this is popping up all over the world in different aspects and in different subject categories, because to be or not to be persecuted has not just one side but many. Matthew chapter 5, 10 and 11, it says, blessed are those who are persecuted for the righteous things that they do, the righteous things that they say, because they persecute you, because they do not want you being righteous. So they'll do anything to sway the crowd, to sway a point of view, to sway anything that you do that is of the word of God, because that's what Satan does. Satan likes to sit down and nitpick and throw you into a debate and put you out of character, put you out of your swag of holiness, so that way he can sit down and go, then add a little bit more fuel to the fire. Now you all the way to the left and then forgot about that path of righteousness. And why do they want to throw you off of that path of righteousness? It's because it says right here, for the sake of theirs, for the sake, all right, of you believing in their righteousness, is because you believe in the one true God and the Messiah. But for those that believe, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when they revile you and when they persecute you and they say all kinds of evil against you for that are falsely in the namesake of Yeshua and the one true God. It's all right here. And a lot of us are going through that. They'll say falsely things. They'll sit down and put a whole big bunch of lies in there, and I'm going through it personally, so I understand the feeling. Somebody will sit down and say, oh, she's like this, or he's like that. All right, when, a matter of fact, it was actually them. You'll sit down, and once you change your life around, somebody will always talk about your past to make you remember all of the bad things that you have left behind. When it says to let go of bitterness in the past, and bitterness and anything of the past, because you are reborn, rebirthed, and renewed of mind, spirit. So remember that. Don't ever let that be the trick of Satan. Now, why do they do these things? Especially when you're speaking of righteousness. It says right here in Proverbs 31, 8 and 10. Let them drink. Speak up for the dumb, for the rights of all the unfortunate. Speak up, judge righteously, champion the poor and the needy. Now back to Matthew 5. And we're going to go to verse 12. And rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they even prosecuted the prophets who were before you. So this has been going on from the beginning of time. From Zechariah to Isaiah to Elijah to Elisha to Moses. All of them would come and they would get persecuted for the things that God would try to say, the laws that they would try to say, and the things that these people would try to wake up the lost, the dumbfounded, the blind, and the deaf to see and hear. But they didn't want to take on the actions or the characteristics or the laws or the love of God in order to do them. We see it in the Tower of Babel. We see it in Sodom and Gomorrah. We see it back in Noah's days. It's an over and over repetitive thing. And this is the last go around. So wake up and understand that your righteousness and your path, if you are being persecuted, is all for a reason. It's a tribulation and a test of your faith. And if you're being persecuted and not of the word of God, you need to step into the word of God, so that way you will have that shield and that armor of God and that veil over you, so that way you won't have to worry about the persecution when it does come. You can spiritually ward it off, because we're all going to go through persecution, because that's just a tribulation and a test of faith. to be or not to be persecuted? That's the question.